connecting to the internet.
Internet.
Networking software.
World Wide Web thing on a computer today.
Computer. Net Surfer Pro.
Hello, and welcome back to Dark Times and Lost Things. We are two people hosting this episode of this podcast about lost media.
Today's episode is going to be about something called Net Surfer Pro, a podcast hosted by two people named Matt and Galen. Well, one day they recorded an episode in the middle of October when something strange happened.
According to unreliable bear witnesses who were bears themselves and who bore witness, the episode itself got lost when one of them tripped and it fell into a ravine. However, this was no normal ravine, because this ravine, it held a windmill. And then when the two hosts looked back, there was no longer a windmill. It disappeared.
But some people on Reddit thought they had seen this windmill before, so a few of them decided to go on a journey in which they bonded over many arduous and terrifying tasks, learning a little bit about themselves and each other.
And much like any Reddit thread, it quickly devolved into racism. I'll take that one again.
I'm sorry, I gotta keep it in now.
Which is why the tapes weren't found until much later.
When a famous small YouTuber named BoingoBoy84237 made it their life goal to find this lost episode. And so they did an entire 17-part documentary series, which you can find in the link below your mind. The link that's below your mind. We'd say the link below if this was like YouTube, but this is not YouTube, and so there aren't really links below.
We do have links in the show notes.
That is true.
To both all our sources and to today's sponsor. We don't have to go... it's not time for our annual sponsorship ad, though, so...
Of course.
We don't have to actually state the name of the sponsor until we're paid to do so.
Of course. They have their own designated zone. Anyway, so the YouTuber whose name I definitely remember, BoingoBoy82478, I believe? 73. I was thinking of a different YouTuber, of course. Uploaded this lost episode, and we're going to be playing it for you today, right now. But first, we're sponsored. It actually, the sponsorship was coming up very soon. Today we've been sponsored by Inaudible. What is Inaudible? It's a series of anti-hearing measures.
It blows up your eardrums.
And then you never have to hear anything again. They sponsored us very specifically, saying that our audience might be really interested in their products after this bit.
And now, for the moment you've all been waiting for, the lost episode of Net Surfer Pro.
Hey, welcome to Net Surfer Pro, a whirlwind ride through the World Wide Web. I'm your host, Matt.
And I'm your co-host, Galen. We didn't really have an opener today, so I guess we're just going to get into the topic.
Right, yeah. We kind of wrapped up the entire 0 o'clock a.m. Club Society bit on the last episode.
Yeah, everything was, no notes, basically. Everything, just kind of like wrapped together nice with a nice little bow on top, which is fitting because it's Thanksgiving season.
Well, it's actually still October. It's almost Thanksgiving season.
That's true, yes. Yeah, well, and I would argue that any time after spooky season is kind of Thanksgiving season, and there's no other really important season before then.
True,
of course.
Yeah. Except for the season of change. Gee,
Yes.
I sure hope the weather cools down in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I don't know. You know what? I'm going to make a cold shot right now. Here, October of 2022, it is not going to cool down in the next coming weeks. It is going to get just much hotter. It is not going to be like a nice, cool Christmas. It's not even going to snow at all in St. Louis, Missouri, November 2022. So today's episode.
Of course, it is spooky month. And
Yes.
we are talking about something very spooky. You may have noticed a teaser showing a specific lion and a, like a scorpion tail, I think it was, or a scorpion? Just a scorpion emoji on our Twitter, which is, of course, a hint to the creator of today's topic. We have touched on a lot of sort of web series horror before, but I think this is the first time we're actually doing a video on analog horror.
Yes. So analog horror, it's come up a couple of times. I've mentioned that I am a big fan. I've also mentioned that I like it even when it's extremely rote and extremely derivative. I'm still like, yeah, give me some of that good analog horror, baby. There's a guy with a fucked up looking face. Hell yeah.
There's 30 dead kids.
There's 30 dead kids.
And 5 dead teenagers.
And so, all right. So, analog horror, as a style of horror, popped up because the creators of today are the people who consumed things yesterday, in my opinion. And so, like, our generation, was kind of on the cusp of things like VHS and DVDs and composite video settings, basically. We were sort of right on the cusp of when that started dying and when, HD started rising. So I feel like there's this sort of, there's this creative, like, event horizon where, like, we have this idea of analog TVs and, old scan lines and stuff and VHS, like, in the back of our minds, but because it was for a, shorter period of time, that means that it kind of still has a bit of mystique to us.
I think, so there's a few things that kind of predate analog horror that I want to bring up.
Yes.
One is found footage horror, such as, like, the Blair Witch Project or Cloverfield. These were horror movies or horror media where the premise was that the media was being recorded by an amateur, treated as if it were real, and then repurposed for a, like, broadcast. This was a both very effective at, like, getting under your skin horror, like, format, but it was also very affordable for independent creators, which led to things like Marble Hornets.
Yes.
Or a lot of other, like, early Slenderman works. The second is Tim and Eric.
Damn, that's...
Tim and Eric are hugely influential on internet culture as a whole in a way I don't think many people really appreciate. One of which is that Tim and Eric embodies the weird public access spirit.
Oh my god, you're so right.
See, a lot of analog horror is sort of predicated on this sort of like affectation of public access TV. That's sort of like a sort of format or style it goes for.
Yeah.
I think in general the idea is that, especially like when you're a kid, it feels like you don't know what's going to come next on TV. It could be anything. I mean, as a kid, I remember, like, there were some episodes of, like, Teletubbies that I was deathly afraid of when I was a toddler.
Yeah.
And so, like, I would always be really worried whenever Teletubbies would come on, because I wouldn't know if it would be that episode.
I have vivid memories of, like, watching just random, like, television ads at, 3 a.m. when I was a very small child and should not have been awake. And, like, that feeling is to me the embodiment of, like, liminal space. Like,
yeah.
Like, less so than, like, literal liminal space, but that feeling of, like, I'm somewhere where I shouldn't be looking at stuff that I shouldn't be looking at, that is both completely above my head and also, like, way too familiar to me.
Yeah. Or, like, seeing a news broadcast when you clearly don't know what's going on about it.
God, yeah.
Or, I think one of the biggest ones is hearing the, like, emergency broadcast signal tests.
Yes.
Those. Yeah. That fear of, like, not knowing what's going to be on TV, you don't get it as much between, like, streaming services giving you a lot of control and also making you buy into a brand. Even, like, cable networks, like if you're watching Nickelodeon or Cartoon Network, you're not going to have the same weird variety of, like, PBS that's not necessarily PBS Kids,
Yeah.
or, your local stations. And public access TV is generally associated with lower standards of production and higher variety, due to like more avant-garde stuff and more outlandish personalities being on there.
Yes.
Which is where Tim and Eric gets a lot of its comedy, is like playing off of like, psychics and spiritual people and like failed comedians and reviewers. And I think that energy manifests itself in analog horror a lot in sort of the opposite way. And I also want to point out Adult Swim's Infomercials block, which gave us the hits such as Too Many Cooks and unedited footage of a bear.
Yep.
Which I think are also pretty foundational to modern analog horror in that that was literally like, you don't know what's going to come on TV. They were broadcast randomly by Adult Swim without any preparation.
Yeah.
And then from there, they became huge on the internet because, like, they have a good spiraling sensation where, like, from the start, it feels slightly off, and then it just gets more and more off as it goes.
Yeah.
That, like, betrayal of something that seems completely benign is also central to a lot of analog horror.
Yeah. Specific shout-outs for these stylings that I think have been mentioned before, but to mention them again. Local 58 and Gemini Home Entertainment. Local 58 is very directly a like play on public access television. It like is literally, I think the first thing is like the Local 58 public access channel being hijacked to tell a like really good little horror story of like a GPS that is wrong. It's genuinely a really good video.
Yeah.
But I like to say things wrong. Gemini Home Entertainment is a little more like the straight to VHS style of horror, the like era where VHS tapes were just made about literally anything, and so you could get a random VHS tape that just had some kind of weird bullshit on it. But both do play into these stylings very heavily and then branch out into bigger stories. No pun intended for, I believe, Gemini Home Entertainment, in which the like branching out of a like, life form organism thing is literally an event that happens in the world.
I also want to shout out Walton Files and
Yes.
FNAF as a whole was very influential. Don't want to go too much into that, but there is one other thing I need to bring up, which is why the VHS format, and it's not just nostalgia. I think it's also tied into lost media in the lost media community, is that, so back in my day, for all you Zoomers here, you could actually just record TV onto a VHS tape. So, like, if there was a show that you wanted to watch but you weren't going to be home, you could take your VCR and just record the broadcast onto a tape that you could play back later. You could do this for, any broadcast, and assuming you had the tape and the hardware to actually record it. And this is how a lot of lost media is found nowadays, is like people who have just taped, long blocks of TV programming who happen to have like a lost episode of The Magic Roundabout or something on it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the concept behind sort of stuff like Local 58 or Mandela Catalog come from, is that like it's somebody who just recorded their TV, and so not only do you not know what the channel's going to be, but this is all in past tense being played back on a tape.
Yeah.
That is why it is like that.
Now, while this is a series, to get into the series itself, that has a lot of the trappings of analog horror, sort of more directly and indirectly, the stories presented by it, at the very least in the second season, are a little more directly actual stories being told, rather than something like found footage. So today we're talking about Alex Kansas / Mr. Manticore.
Mm-hmm.
I believe his real name is Alex Canassis. I would have to double check that. That's just like some random YouTube comments that I saw. But for sake of clarity, Mr. Manticore is the name of the channel as of right now, and so Mr. Manticore is how we will be discussing him.
Mm-hmm.
But his series of the Monument Mythos, it got very big for very good reason. It's like literally my favorite like analog horror media. Like literally second only maybe to Pets Cop, and even then it's two different like styles of things.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd call Pets Cop analog horror.
Yeah.
It's a Let's Play horror.
Let's Play Lost Media horror. It's creepypasta esque. Anyway, so the Monument Mythos blew up, very rightly so, extremely good. What is now known as Season 1 is the generally famous I would say famous at this point within the community videos of like Alcatraz attack and
Liberty Lurker.
Yeah, Liberty Lurker is the first one. Suez Canal Crab is the best one.
Yeah.
But the ideas presented by them to very briefly explain it is it is a series in which literal monsters lurk within the confines of various monuments within the United States. The Liberty Lurker is like a big monster thing that within this alternate universe, the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty was made like bigger than the statue itself so that it could contain this monster. There's the famous shot within the video of the Statue of Liberty being pushed to the side so that it could like get out, basically.
There was like Lincoln Looker is like something that requires human sacrifices, that like people will be trapped alive inside the statue of Lincoln in the Lincoln Memorial until they are dead.
Yep. The Washington Monument video, I can't remember what it is called. I think that's the one about the tree.
Yeah.
The Washington Monument in this universe is like it holds a singing tree that people are like lured into, brought up to the top, and then dropped in the monument as like sacrifices to the tree. Again, there's a variety of different styles of like essentially like direct horror and indirect horror with it, but the main theme within all of these videos tends to be like the hidden history that we live on and yet so very clearly forget all the time about these monuments to American excellence.
Right. The U.S. presents all these monuments, like the Washington Monument, the Statue of Lincoln, the Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore, but they use those to sort of fabricate this idea of, optimism and righteousness, when really it's built on a lot of bloodshed and hatred.
Yes.
And that hatred is metaphorically presented as a monster.
Yes.
That is the consequences of the U.S.'s actions that are just lurking right below.
Yes. We're not going to get into Season 1 because Season 1 has had a lot of talented people talk about it. However, today we are going to be talking about Season 2. We will bring up moments where Season 2 collides with Season 1. But for the sake of this, we kind of assume that you have at the very least like watched a video about what Season 1 is.
Yeah. I just want to add a few like spark notes.
Go
and
ahead.
Also I want to mention really badly Alcatraz attack, because that's one of my favorite concepts in the Monument Mythos.
Yes.
Alcatraz is like this replicating parasite, like a gray goo nano machine, in that it like takes matter and copies itself to create more Alcatraz. It feels very much like sort of go listen to the System of a Down song Prison Song. It's like a commentary on how there's sort of this propagation of prisons within the US, which of course are for profit, have slave labor added, and it is a parasite that is destroying the country.
Yes.
So other cliff notes though, the universe gets destroyed by a tree.
Yeah, so the universe gets destroyed. There's a big like Homestuck flash.
Yeah,
moment.
I called it a Homestuck flash because
Yeah.
of the pacing and amount of information presented at once. Where a big sword that cut things, but the things stay alive when it cut them, cuts a tree.
It collides. Well, no, it collides with a blast from
right.
the Air Force One Angel, who is like a collection of souls fused into one being. That like essentially wants to be left alone, because it's this collection of veterans from I think D-Day, I want to say, or I might be
I think they were found in Egypt.
That's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's this collection of veterans, like souls,
Yeah.
like fused together into one form, who just want to be left alone, and the United States will not stand for that. And so they send Liberty, the statue, which is alive and also has a sword that can cut people, like cut their heads off, but their heads are still alive and their bodies are still alive.
Yeah.
They send it to him, and when the sword that cuts things but keeps things alive meets the immovable object of like a blast from the like, you know, the Air Force One Angel, it literally like divides the entire world.
Right. It's because like it creates shards of the sword, and the shards cut everything like infinitely.
Yeah.
And I think it does cut the magic tree that like grows a lot, and so all the shards start growing a lot.
Yes.
Anyways, it causes the destruction of the universe. The universe is now corners. We don't talk about that.
Yeah. The survivors of this calamity are known as corner folk, and that's all we need to know about that.
Yeah. But yeah, that is relevant to this one. Season 2 is in a new universe.
Yes.
It does not have President James Dean.
It does not have President
We didn't
James
even
Dean,
mention that James Dean is president in season 1.
and he's the best
He's
president.
the best president.
The best president.
Yeah.
I would unironically buy James Dean for president merch if Mr. Manticore ever feels like putting some out. Okay. So, the Nixonverse, Season 2.
Mhm.
The Nixonverse is what it is called in post, because famously the trailers for all of these seasons are made after the entire seasons. There's a playlist on his channel. I know that he has privated it to like keep things consistent, essentially, but everything is just unlisted, so you can still watch all of this. We recommend that you do, because I'm about to try and blaze through this a bit.
It's about like an hour and a half or 2 hours long. It's like feature length.
Yeah. Honestly, even like half of that is one specific video.
Yes, which I'm so excited to talk about.
Oh man, I'm excited that you're excited. Okay, so first video, The Last Son of Alcatraz. We have some pictures of what looks like kind of like a zygote. I think it's supposed to be like maybe a fetus, but it has very distinctive irregularity about it, that gets sort of talked about later. But then we get what is fun fact, an actual PSA of James Dean before his fatal car accident in real life, talking about safe driving.
Wow.
That is in fact real. Then there's pictures of a Superman-like figure during World War II, which the title drop reveals to be the last son of Alcatraz.
Mm-hmm. Also known as the D-Day Night.
Yes, also known as the D-Day Night, also known as the Crimson King. But
Down, no.
We're gonna get to that later. But it should also be noted that a lot of the series is recontextualizing, especially recontextualizing very old things. And I believe that as he is being described, the last son of Alcatraz is literally described in the same terms as Superman. Like the edits have literal like Superman garb Superman, especially like old Superman. Within that is what's edited within him. There's a lot of parallels to Superman as well.
They say, look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane.
It's
airman, bitch, and I'm bringing the pain.
And so that is Last Son of Alcatraz. D-Day Night is the next video. There's a picture of the night shown during an explosion. He's like being blasted away, and the camera sort of like turns to show his figure better. And the words, "The horned serpent lives," slowly pops up on screen, and then it hard cuts to a kind of war expose, in which a reporter, who is Alice Avenue, of the Nightly News, waxes poetic about how the D-Day Knight, who is the last son, of course, was, quote, the only one with free will that day, and he used it to save as many lives as he could. When we cut back to the Horn Serpent picture, a fade into a much more detailed helmet pops in, quote, like the picture of the Horn Serpent helmets after excavation. To talk a little more briefly, the whole discussion of Alice Avenue is this kind of like waxing poetic about how no one else had free will that day. They were meant to just run forward and die during D-Day. But the last son, the D-Day Knight, was the one who swooped in and saved a whole bunch of people. Moving on quickly again. The Queen of the Lunarians. We get some photos from an unnamed character that their grandmother tried to burn, of various photos of the moon landing, and in one of them, it zooms in on the picture. It is a picture of like a bright flashing figure who is the Queen of the Lunarians. We get various different quotes from different astronauts, including Ed Dwight, who is credited here as the first man on the moon. Sidebar.
Yes.
Ed Dwight is a real person. He is, within the fiction of this universe, he is the first man on the moon. But Ed Dwight, the person, was the first black man to enter the training program for which NASA chose their astronauts, and he was not chosen pretty clearly because of race. And so nowadays he is a sculptor.
Mm-hmm.
He makes art. That is really important for
Yeah.
later getting back to the story.
Yes.
So, during the first landing on the moon, the Queen is the first one to speak, is the first person to speak on the moon. And she talks about how everybody has the chance of beauty, but so few get to experience it, and then implies that a great calamity is coming, and that a number of those who are beautiful, quote, not physically but something else, will have the chance to become as gods. John Glenn, who is also a real guy, first American to orbit the Earth in 1962, orders Ed Dwight to blast the Queen, and in response, the Queen evicts him from reality.
Goodbye.
It's so good. I love it. I love it so much. Get fucked, John Glenn, I guess.
Yeah.
Should be noted as well, I will pop in here with a YouTube comment that I have not fact-checked, but I'm just going to take as full fact because it's a YouTube comment. In a 1975 interview with Playboy, supermodel Danielle Luna, who is heavily implied here to be the Queen of Luvarians, is quoted as saying there's a great division coming about on this planet, direct quote from the video, with the rest of her speech being lifted to the speech given the astronauts, including the parts of people who will die because they don't know how to live, and those who are beautiful enough, I don't mean physically, but something beyond, they will have the chance to learn how to fly, to be beautiful, to rise above the level of normal human beings, to become superior beings first, and eventually gods and goddesses. So, more trivia.
Yeah. A lot of fun sort of metatextuality here.
Yes.
References to real life baked into the fake life. That's kind of like our life, but it's not our life.
Yes. I swear to God, we're going to explain some of these in more detail. However, I'm just going to speed through. Jesus in Vietnam, what the fuck do you want me to say about this one? It is a shitpost video. It's great. I love it. It's so good. Mr. Manticore could put out a video that's just him baking a cake, and I'd be like, hell yeah, this is my shit. What are the lore implications of this?
Yeah. Also, it's very on the nose.
Yes. There's direct text that says, like, our freedom greater than your freedom, our Christ greater than your Christ equals world peace.
Yeah.
Hard cut to their peace is built on inequality.
Mm-hmm.
It's really loud and in your face, and like it is a joke video, but like it has real implications for the series, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And it's still making a point.
It is. I believe it like refers to like the United States as like the new Bethlehem or something to the effect. So it is probably the most direct about like the American Empire and just, you know what? Go ahead and listen to The American Jesus.
Yeah.
You'll kind of get the same vibe as well.
Yeah.
So, again, I say this loving this video. I don't know what the fuck to say about it else.
It's like shouting.
Yes.
Okay.
The missing eye of Jesus Christ. After the Korean War, the last son returned to his fortress in Alcatraz. Nuclear missiles followed him home. Direct quote from the video. We get photos of devastation, and then the text, "The last son has been captured." The same unnamed person from Queen of the Lunarians has a picture of his missing eye. And then we cut to Apollo 12's mission. Apollo 11 landed on the moon. Apollo 12 went to the moon to retrieve one of the Lunarians' eyes, which is then surgically implanted into the last son, who is Jesus Christ, who is the Jesus from Vietnam, into, quote, a bastardized impersonator of the Lord. Then we get a Bible quote, "If thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light," Matthew 6:22. It's you, at 6:22, Matthew said. And then we get an eye for an eye makes the whole world mine, United States.
Yeah.
I love it so much. Oh, and then credits. Again, blazing through this as much as I can, but now we get to the house in the ocean.
Yes!
Which is 40 minutes long.
This is my second favorite creepy thing with the house in the name.
Yeah, that's fair. It's
One of them is grass, the other's water type.
God damn it. So, okay. The house in the ocean, this requires, this requires its own, prelude section. Okay, The House in the Ocean was a series or full video. I think it was a series of videos that got coalesced into one video for the purposes of this. But the idea was, it was essentially an homage to Alex Kansas's previous work before Monument Mythos, as an homage to his father, because his father really liked his work, and so this was meant as a direct sort of done in the style. It was for a very long time completely disconnected from the Monument Mythos, but I don't even have notes for this because God, how do you summarize this?
Okay, so it opens with a food at home meme.
Yes, it does, which is great.
Yeah, it's in Windows Movie Maker.
Yeah.
I called this digital horror. We finally made it.
Yeah.
So,
actually, digital horror is stuff like the June archives and stuff for Flipnote. Sorry, my nerds showed.
Yeah. So, okay, there is a lot going on in this. The first bit is sort of this repeated pattern about the house in the ocean and presidents.
Yes.
What is the house in the ocean? It's a house in the ocean. It's indestructible. You don't want to get close to it. It's dangerous. Its wood chips are poisonous and serrated. It first starts with Obama touching a poisoned wood chip. He talks about how hundreds of beachgoers were dead because of the house, and they're raising precautions about the house. But the video creator does some internet research. It's very conspiracy theory type, and there's this remastered footage of the Obama press conference where he talks about this, and his tone is completely different. He's pro house.
Yeah. It's I wanna stress it's 90% of the original, and then just the last line in the original is I advise nobody to even look at the house, and then the last line in the remastered is I advise everyone to come down and look at the house.
Yeah. Also, it uses a shitty Uber duck voice for the president.
Yes,
but because it's so poor quality, it's fine. It sounds it's excusable.
Yeah.
Next is Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. They talk about how there is a house shooting club where they shoot the house for sport.
Yeah.
And then there is Bush and Barbara Clinton. Or not, George and Barbara Bush.
Yeah, George and Barbara Bush.
And they get attacked by the house?
Yeah.
In retaliation.
Yeah, I don't know what they do, but yeah, they get attacked by the house, and there's footage of or there's a photo of nothing that's actually human, but it's this is them after the incident.
And they're welded to the house.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's this clear sort of analogy, the Reagan and the house shooting club is sport hunting and other sort of games that the elite play that presidents are able to do because they are kind of above the law, quote unquote.
Yeah, and I also love like the
I think W getting hurt is a reference to Cheney shooting.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I also love the fact that like essentially when it is positive, like when it is presented by Obama, it's presented as though there's like, oh wow, there's just randomly wood chips. Who could have guessed? And then we immediately find out after that it's because of fucking Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Like every single ailment in America, it's because of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Then it also eventually it shows a footage where the door to the house is about to be opened, and the resident of the house has like these curved horns.
Yes.
Smash cut to the psychiatric interviews.
Yes. Which are these like animated animated little interviews of a guy who has like an out of body experience near. He like goes fishing, gets knocked off the boat, I think, near the house. He winds up on the shore near it, and then has like an out of body experience where he sees this like giant crimson headed, like this crescent moon headed creature that like touches him and is like, everything will be okay or something like that. I don't remember the exact words. This is a 40-minute long. If there is one video you should watch of any of this, it's definitely The House on the Ocean. It's really good. It's just that, good lord, it is like the entire length of the rest of the series in one video.
Yeah, so while he's fishing, he sees in the water like a whole ship graveyard, including a friend of his that he was supposed to meet out there.
Right.
And when he's underwater is when he first feels like he's transforming into the Crescent King, but when he wakes up on the shore, he's himself again. So he's talking to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist doesn't believe him, but in like the last second of the clip, the patient's head comes off and the Crescent King's head grows from inside.
Yeah. Then we get a fucked up Minnie Mouse cartoon.
First, there's a few references to brainwashing.
Right.
And then we get the fucked up Mickey Mouse cartoon. So the framing is that Walt Disney broadcast a cartoon to the Crescent King inside the house, or at least broadcast a cartoon to the house, and the broadcast was returned with a new cartoon that was fucked up.
Yeah.
I hate it. I hate Creepy Mickey.
It's
kill it.
so bad.
If that thing comes by my house, I kill it.
Honestly, if I were to see that damn thing, I would stomp on it until it was a small brown stain.
Yeah, so essentially it is this creepy mouse thing with a creepy smile. It keeps trying to make friends, but every time that happens, it gets hurt. Eventually, this pushes it off a cliff and it falls into the sea. And it sees the Crescent King. And the Crescent King says something about that the Crescent King is already inside you and your brain cells have rearranged to remember him, which I think is incredible.
Yes.
That's how memory works, everyone.
It's a very like ending of the Ben Drowned creepypasta style ending that I really like.
The
like
infection ending.
Yeah. That like, now that you have borne witness to this, you too are a vessel for the Crimson King.
Crescent King.
The Crescent King.
The Crimson King is A, prog rock album, B, a stand from JoJo.
God damn it. That's the problem, is that I'm too deep into JoJo and prog rock. Okay, the Crimson King.
Yeah, Crescent King.
It's a Crescent King, fuck!
The Crimson King has invaded your brain cells and rearranged them to remember him.
The Crimson Chin.
Yeah.
So...
Moon Knight?
Okay, so... The whole, the vibe and a lot of the theme of The House on the Ocean is like this warping of memory, which is what makes me think it was originally a bunch of different videos that got like deleted and re-uploaded. Is like the whole thing is that like, you know, the original versions of each of these interviews and such gets distorted to serve the purpose of the Crescent King.
Mm-hmm.
Got him right this time.
Yep.
Which then like essentially becomes this, you know, this like thing of culture, this literal meme, this aspect of culture that like infects us and will one day ruin us all.
Yeah. Also, it's worth noting that the Mickey cartoon is played twice, and the second time has an extended ending,
yes,
where inside the mouse's mind, it gets like fused with the Crescent King.
Yeah.
And then there's a story about Chase, an android who was made to act in movies. except she was given free will and sentience and chose to run away. Worth noting is Chase's head has a satellite dish sort of built as her head, and I think that's comparable to the crescent head of the Crescent King.
Yes.
The Crescent King brainwashes people and invades their mind, and its head is a satellite dish. And then also they're trying to reach Chase, but they can't get her to come back. They send her a cartoon showing how her fans love her so much and how she can make so much money by working with the film company, but she ignores it.
Nice. Good. We stan a queen.
Yeah.
Okay. See the Last Sun. See the Last Sun is the next video. And it posits that the house in the ocean is in fact relevant because it is, quote, not an urban legend, it's a cover story. The Last Sun has become the house on the ocean.
You ever just become a house?
Yeah, you ever just sort of stop and say, you know what, I'm a tired, and then you become a house for some reason?
Yeah.
So the Lunarian cloud ship and the Last Sun have a conversation. The Last Sun laments the damage that he caused, but the ship insists that he must become their king and take his place on their throne. The ship literally descends and grabs him as he says no. It's the only audible, it's the only English spoken. The rest of the conversation is kind of these weird staticky noises that sound like they're essentially above us, above our human understanding.
Told through text, subtitles.
It's very good. We get a final picture showing the evolution of the Last Sun from man to knight to Jesus to the Crescent King. End of the video. D-Day night returns. After the Vietnam War, the Lunarians are forced the Last Sun to become the Crescent King. They begin to erode language in America, shown in video as the language actively getting worse as it goes on, which is great, before teaching them the Lunarians' language. Direct parallels here to colonization, if you will.
Many, many different people and cultures.
Yes.
Especially indigenous cultures.
Especially indigenous cultures.
But also worth noting, the Irish and the Scottish.
I think the common voice actor Lev, who's worked a whole lot on the Monument Mythos, literally said as someone who's Welsh, I absolutely relate to somebody someone coming in and taking away your culture.
Exactly.
Then the story of the knight before he became the knight is relayed to us by Alice Avenue, the same reporter of the D-Day night video. Essentially, it's broadcast in a sort of bid to get back to the knight's humanity, I believe. Remind him where he came from. The story of the knight is essentially that it's essentially Superman. There are direct parallels here to Superman. This is not just superficial. It is it deeply runs within the text itself. But he was a normal boy with a normal life. He got into a car accident with assumedly James Dean. And after the other man died, he jumped off a cliff to avoid an oncoming car and, quote, believed harder and harder, and just as he was about to hit the water, he swept up into the air. And so that is the sort of literal origin story. Another note is that he essentially was he had this obsession with winning. He had this obsession he could do great things, he could, change people's lives, but only if he could win. And so, when he swept up into the air, he knew that he was a winner. The story is broadcast, as I said, in hopes of reminding the knight who he was. After the broadcast, Knight throws Alice off the Chrysler building.
Yeah.
It's so
damn.
It's done in a really good, really spooky way, but just relaying the literal events is really fucking funny.
Yeah.
I believe the last text is, no one is gone forever, do not share their secrets, except it's spelled one is W-O-N, gone is G-O-H-N, again, language is eroding.
Mm-hmm.
D-Day Nightfall, the not second to last, the third to last episode. The knight apologizes to the world for killing Alice Avenue, but insists she lives on, stating that, in his world, statues held souls. So, this is a big fucking reveal.
Yeah.
So this is the big direct reveal that, yes, the D-Day Knight is somebody from, the previous Monument Mythos universe.
Yes.
The Dinaverse.
Instead of being an alien from the planet Krypton, it's an alien from the planet Earth, but a different Earth.
Yeah. We then see footage of a statue, and it's sort of, shaky VHS footage, but as it eventually zooms in on the statue's eye, we see the Lunarian eye implanted in the statue. And then there's like a bit where the knight apparently like took the head off the statue for one day and then returned it the next. Then we see the knight's fucked up face. I had to go to the comments to actually figure it out, but we see his fucked up face with only one eye in it.
Mm-hmm.
He is, of course, missing the other eye, as
Yep.
said earlier. Some specific notes again. The statue that is shown is of a very famous actress who apparently played Lois Lane. Also, Lois Lane, Alice
Lois
Avenue.
Lane?
Lois Lane. Lois.
It's like the people who spell Lois from Family Guy as Lewis.
Lois.
Language really is degrading.
God. We're degrading it real time.
Though Lois Lane would be a really fun twist.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? There's a Superman's son who's bisexual. He should date a Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
That would be very fun. Anyway, so direct parallels there once more. Also should be noted that the knight, as he is explaining this, it is in the bad English. So even the knight himself is not above the degradation of the English language, the American language, I almost said.
Oh no.
Like a true American, God.
Oh no.
Okay, so, penultimate video. Nixon is God.
The series is funny.
I fucking love this series so much. Alright, this is an interview between Ed Dwight and the Moon God, who is Nixon in this universe. Basically, Nixon created the other godly beings, the sun, the night, and the queen, as tests for the world. Our world is, of course, unkind to them, and as such, we will fail this test. And then he kills Ed Dwight. We get some really cute artwork afterwards, but that is the shortest I could condense this. Shortest. Homestar. A strong bed. I'm trying to summarize the Monument Mythos.
Oh my god, it's a monument!
Okay.
There's a horse on the ocean! There's a horse on the ocean?
So, okay. I'm just gonna read out a YouTube comment. So this clears some stuff up. Nixon/God is from the Deanverse, was shot out of the horned serpent, and might have killed Washington due to the knight having his skull. Also, apparently, yes, the horned serpent mask was Washington's skull. Washington got we found the body of Washington frozen in the Monument Mythos Season 1. We did nothing with that as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Until now.
Until now.
Nixon had his skull.
The Sun, the Knight, and the Queen are all extensions of him, which is why they all make references to the Deanverse. Sun references Alcatraz, Knight referencing Freedom Faller, and Queen mentioning the Great Division. Nixon seems intent on keeping his spirits. That doesn't bode well for anyone. And if he's only worried about the Crimson King, who knows what he thinks of D-Day night and his grief.
You said Crimson King again.
I did! God damn it!
Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is something I was kind of confused with, is the Crescent King different from the D-Day Knight, or is the Son of Alcatraz different from the D-Day Knight? And I think the answer is the Sun and the Knight are two different people, but obviously they're both creations of Nixon.
I think this is a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost thing.
I mean, yes, it's a sort of parallel to the triumvirate. No, not triumvirate. The trichotomy, the tricolored hat, the whatever it's called in
the three spooky boys of Catholicism.
Yeah.
So I'm fairly certain that the D-Day Night and the last son of Alcatraz is the D-Day Night. I'm fairly certain that's it, because we get the evolution.
Mm-hmm.
The last son becomes the D-Day Night, becomes the Crescent King.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we gotta then bring up the last episode, which is the best Homestuck Flash.
It's really good, actually. Okay,
yeah.
The Ed Dwight paradox. At the end of the previous one, Nixon is God, we get a really good not gruesome but gruesome view of what became of Ed Dwight.
But gruesome.
But gruesome. It's this silhouette that looks like you're supposed to, like, put on, got shot here or whatever, except it, like, most of it's missing.
Yeah.
Like, the head is decapitated, and, like, there's this, like, 3-pronged, like, shot or something. Like, he was shot 3 times, but at 3 vastly different angles. I'm not sure. It's cool. But that's the cover photo of this. So, the Lunarians try to get the Knight on their side for rule, stating that inequality infects all aspects of Earth. This is shown as a chess match. We have the Queen literally moving into place, and then the Knight moving and then moving again. The Knight responds, "There is no prophecy, there is only me." Banger of a line.
Mm-hmm.
He performs an Alcatraz checkmate on the Lunarians.
He does his Alcatraz attack!
He really
Activate
does.
super mode!
Fucking dark trunks.
You mean dark trunks?
Oh yeah, sorry, dark trunks. So, he fucking bombines into an Alcatraz checkmate, and speech returns to normal after 9 months. However, we see in found footage-esque video of the Crescent King, version of The Last Son, quote, "Grief made him a monster, he will not stop crying. He does not want to live," and then he starts to stand up, and, like, the crescent starts to take, like, he, like, lifts his head so that it looks more like the horns, and it says, "The horned serpent lives." As the final part of the video, Nixon explains to Dwight that he intends to render the whole world, himself included, as fiction. Dwight then is essentially the arbiter of this fictional reality, the one who, in our world, quote, preserved the whole series. The final quote of the entire season being, "In our world, Ed Dwight never went to the moon. Instead, he creates monuments. In our world, Ed Dwight preserves the past."
Banger quote.
Banger fucking quote. Banger series. I
Yes.
love this so much.
It really is Homestuck. It just said, nah, this is fiction.
Okay. So,
I want to say something.
go ahead.
So I love the Alcatraz checkmate. I believe it is specifically, like, the ability that Alcatraz in season 1 in the Deanverse has to, like, consume matter.
Yes.
In this case, it doesn't affect the rest of the universe because the Nixon universe is a different universe from the Deanverse, which they're all from.
Yes.
Very, very great bit of it just being like, nah, fuck this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of themage going on. It continues a lot of the themes of the Monument Mythos Season 1, of things like, the attack against American exceptionalism in Manifest Destiny.
Yes.
That those were awful crimes committed. In this case, though, it plays it through more of a personal lens.
Yes.
Where, like, there are main characters that are both the cause of and the victim of these events.
Yeah. So The Last Son is a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to not look at that and essentially read it through a big lens of, like, how we treat our veterans.
Of course.
However, I think it's also in equal parts essentially a statement of, like, American military exceptionalism, which is to say, like, through the story of just one person, of The Last Son / Jesus / the Crescent King, it's essentially this story of, like, an arms race that only ends in bloodshed and destruction. It's this terrible escalation of, like, he starts off good intentions, D-Day night, actually saving people. He becomes Jesus in Vietnam, which I think literally means they essentially, like, crucified him to do their bidding. I'm still not 100% certain on it, but we know Vietnam. And, like, the idea present is very clearly, like, the sort of, good-natured, like, actively good things that we did for World War II. World War II being a war that, like, genuinely had to happen. Genuinely, we had to fight against fascism. And so, like, it's that sort of good-natured, like, yeah, Americans come in to save the day. We fought the Nazis, hell yeah. Except it's more through a lens of him saving people, which is also very fun and very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, the whole point, within war, usually people are going to end up dead. And so the fact that he is here exclusively, seemingly, to save people is really interesting.
I think also the line of like he was the only one with free will that day is specifically that, like, to quote System of a Down again, why do they always send the poor?
Yes.
That essentially the soldiers on both sides are fighting because they have to, they're told to, you know, there are good reasons for, you know, the Americans to fight, for example, and the other allied forces, but like the D-Day Knight is the only one who does not have a side to fight for, instead fighting purely for their own reasons, which in this case is just.
Yeah.
I think with the Jesus, the Vietnam Jesus, I think it's really a bit about sort of the connection that religion has with military in America.
Yes.
That these are like fighting not just for rights but for God. You know, there's a huge overlap there of essentially military tends to like vilify people the same way religion does, in both are sometimes most of the time very fascist.
Yeah.
Also, it feels very much like they are turning the D-Day Knight into something he doesn't want to, as a like figurehead for a movement.
Yeah.
And it is a bit of like propaganda. It leads into it's the whole like, you know, I think propaganda is a major theme in that in this case religion is being used as a tool to propagandize even the most just of soldiers.
Yeah.
That they're not just content with him being a lifesaver, they need him to fight for like the right reasons, quote unquote.
Yeah.
They need him to fight for God instead of just for the sake of everyone's lives.
I would like to draw slight parallels to Watchmen. I will not say anything directly just because like haven't reread it in a very long time, but a lot of the usage of Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen is like essentially a centralized figurehead as a allegory of like the nuclear bomb and like, you know, sort of war, like nuclear war in general, how he is the ultimate deterrent because he is a god that is on the American side, and once he stops relating to people, well, he just kind of leaves it and all the humans have to pick things back up.
Exactly.
And I think that there is pretty direct parallel here to the D-Day Night as well, although that might also just be because both, I believe, were directly influenced from Superman.
Yes.
But yeah, the idea of like having to use this especially the fact that it's like using the past, using like one of the few just cases of war as propaganda for much more obvious, much more blatant, like just war for the sake of profit / war for the sake of, you know, vague militarism, is also like a pretty direct indictment of how America likes to glorify soldiers without like actually interrogating why it does so.
Mm-hmm. As with the Giza ghost, Alex Kansas has a pretty running sort of sentiment about veterans being victims.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times they do what they're told for their country, but like they don't always have a choice in the matter of the acts they perform, and they suffer a lot more when they're out of the military. I think like the fact that the D-Day Knight as a soldier goes into battle multiple times, comes back with severe PTSD, and gets shot at repeatedly by the president.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
That is such an evocative sort of storyline there. It's very, like, humanizing in this case. I think also, I'm glad you brought up Dr. Manhattan, because a lot of ways I feel like this is anti-great man theory.
Yes.
In that the great man in this case, the D-Day Knight, is impossible to have existed. It's showing like, oh, so what if there was this giant soldier that could, you know, completely turn the tides of the battle without anyone dying? Then they get relied on, they get used and abused, and then they retreat. It's like, this is a what if scenario, or like an alt history of what if there was just one guy who could do all this.
Yeah.
The pressure and expectations and the forces around him are so drastic that they make him turn into a house.
Yes.
He wants to exist as an inanimate object alone in the ocean, like Darmok.
Yeah.
Alone on the ocean. And when this great man is like resummoned by another property, you know, he just becomes brainwashed again and used again. and like it's showing like now that he is against Americans, he is even, he's still dangerous and drastic. It's like, I think the great man theory of history is often criticized because it puts a lot of what's the word, like importance on people who don't deserve it necessarily. It sort of removes the achievements of the many, large groups or collaborators. Like, sure, Alexander the Great conquered a lot of territory, but you gotta admit, his soldiers had to have been pretty good for that to work, right?
Yeah.
In this case, I think this is like, what if there really was a great man? And it's like, well, he just has complete control over the world.
I like this. I very much like this take on the great man idea, because to me it posits like, if there was a great man, if there was one big man who could solve a lot of our problems, why would we ever treat him any differently than we treat everyone else?
Yeah.
It's this sort of like deconstruction of even like of both the great man theory and of like, American military culture, where it's like, yeah, if General Patton was as good as they say, General Patton being a bad example, he was famously, I believe, really bad. But he's the corncob pipe guy. Oh no, that's General Douglas MacArthur. Point being, if there really was one guy who was like the best soldier, the best guy at killing everyone ever, we would not treat him at all, like, we would never treat him any differently than anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, he would absolutely get the same shit treatment that every veteran does after war, once they're no longer useful to the country.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I use that term in the sort of, like, empirical term, like, the literal empire term of, like, well, they have served their purpose. Like, that is how America essentially treats its veterans. Why would we ever treat the one big guy who did a bunch of war any differently?
Exactly. I mentioned the connections to, like, propaganda, the symbolism of the crescent being similar to a satellite dish, the broadcasting. I still love the sort of likening of, like, possession by some evil entity and your brain cells rearranging to remember him.
Yeah.
And how that relates to propaganda. It's like the fact that, so like, House on the Ocean by itself is really good as just a self-contained weird story, but I think the fact that it came right after Jesus in Vietnam made it even better in my eyes as someone who experienced this all through the playlist.
Yeah.
Because Jesus in Vietnam was very overtly like religious propaganda, military propaganda. We are going to conquer the world, for our Christ or whatever, the United States of the world or whatever.
Yeah. Team America World Police.
Yeah. Essentially this view that America is correct and there's only one God and we should fight people so they learn. And House on the Ocean keeps bringing up these ideas. And I think that theme of like, broadcasting things to people was more apparent because they were right after the other. I think as a greater whole in terms of the series, it is that propaganda is both or not even propaganda, but just like broadcasting is often a tool for colonialism, such as the whole like radio waves causing America to forget language and just the destruction of language as a whole. It is a source for manipulation. I also think it's interesting how Chase, a android made to perform in movies, is being broadcast to in order to get her back. And ultimately, the Crescent King is like, if it's a warrior, then people who like memorize who the Crescent King is and have him in their brain can then turn into the Crescent King is like, it's almost like a sleeper agent.
Yeah.
But just that, like, the idea of this rage in violence could sit in somebody. Also, how the Crescent King, specifically, like, the Mickey that joins with the Crescent King is the one that has been, like, isolated and lonely without support from anyone. I think it also gets hit off the cliff by, like, a train, which sort of sounds like how the son of Alcatraz had, like, jumped off the cliff after the car crash.
Yeah.
It's sort of, I don't want to be like, make friends with incels, but like, Yeah, people who get isolated tend to be hateful, and they need support and not, to be told that their anger is righteous towards this group of people.
Yeah. It's so like I don't think it's I don't think it's a like specific message essentially, but I do think it is essentially heavily thematic. It's theme forward about like the way that sort of isolation and like getting caught up with just yourself can be easy. It can like easily lead to people getting caught up with, this eldritch monster, which in this case kind of represents like, like you said, the sort of hate and anger and rage sort of blossoming forth to be destructive. I really, really like the House in the Ocean happening. Like, I like the House in the Ocean being canonized in this way, because it's really, like, the Crescent King in the original, like, without any other context, is kind of this, like, abstract eldritch creature.
Right.
It's this state you become. And, like, it seems to allude to, like, being isolated, sort of having, like, being fed misinformation and falling into this like weird state of anger and hatred and something. However, I also really like what I love is that it kind of recontextualizes this so that, I mean, not even kind of, it literally recontextualizes it so that the Crescent King is a sympathetic figure. Like,
yeah,
now that we know the story, TM, not to say that this was always the plan or anything. I've said before, but like, as a story writer, you can backfill anything, basically. I don't think the point of the House in the Ocean was always to be part of this, but I do think that the themes, like, I think that essentially Mr. Manticore saw that the themes were very similar and kind of like wanted to tie them together because it would be like it does a lot of the heavy lifting once you sort of already have this foundational piece. And so like really love that. The constant allusions to Superman I also find really fun and fascinating. I think it's really fun and interesting that it is using this already pre-established language to tell this story, because like Superman as a concept was basically utilized in the same way that the D-Day Night kind of was.
No, literally utilized. It was made during World War II.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, it was literally this whole point of like this, great big man who could,
punch Nazis. Which is good.
Yeah, we 100% condone punching Nazis. But like I think this is really effective as a sort of like, again, a looking into the great man theory, the great man fallacy of history of like, what if we did have a Superman? And we've already sort of talked about that before, but like, a lot of media that analyzes Superman himself, like, I think when you make it literally about Superman, you make it more about the ideal than the man himself, and so like, then you get things like, I don't know, Batman v Superman or like Superman Returns, and it's like there's a lot of ways you can analyze this. The fact that it is not literally about Superman, but about somebody who takes up a lot of the same ideals and has a lot of direct parallels to him, is, I think, what makes this work. Where like, there's problems with readapting Superman, but there are less problems with using him as a thematic centerpiece.
By the way, speaking of like comic allusions and references, I love that the D-Day Night episodes are named after Batman storylines.
Yep.
The D-Day Night, of course, then D-Day Night Returns, and then Nightfell, which is when Bane breaks Batman's back.
Nice.
You deserved it.
Go ride your train conductor Bane.
It's right up the way to Bane. I got promoted again.
Oh, hey, good for you. I'm so glad.
Thanks. I get a free season pass.
Wow, just one?
Yeah.
Well, at least you can go here when you're not working here. How often do you work here?
I don't work here. I work at Six Flags.
Oh, right, yeah, sorry. How often do you work at Six Flags?
7 days a month.
Wow, that's
8 a week.
Oh, okay. I was about to say 7 days a month is a pretty cushy gig.
The weeks turn into months when you work here.
Oh, yeah. Nah, I feel that.
But yeah, I want to, before we end off, because this is going kind of late, I want to mention just I love the style and atmosphere of these. They remind me not just of like the random history documents you'll see on PBS, but of like specifically the videos that will play in history museums.
Yeah.
The audio quality, the sort of lack of music. It's like going through a you know, like an exhibit in a history museum and they have a looping video about, you know, some random guy. I love that aspect to them. The use of like found footage and recycled material is really good. There's a lot of, you know, visual effects and audio effects to sort of repurpose them. A lot of the like official charts and documents that are made for these are really cool.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the evolution of the D-Day night, the body images and the other like reports from the moon. All that's really cool. Really well done. Just an interesting sort of visual data collage. I think that's sort of a way I would describe it, as a collage.
Yeah. The styles of these video, like just explaining all of these through text, we've said this a million times about a million different series, but if this has given you an inkling, go watch it. We have not spoiled a lot because the presentation is so tangibly good in so many of these. Just the wonderful power in the Ed Dwight paradox where Nixon is talking, like the text scrolls up from a picture of him, like it's in the background, but it mixes with this echoey effect that is put over his voice itself. And so like it gives this illusion of like a dream that's being told to you, or like being relayed to you as directly as possible. And like it's really good. Like Mr. Manticore is extremely good at like video editing and at like the usage of these materials. And so yeah, it is absolutely, please check them out for this visual splendor alone.
Yeah. I think that about covered everything I wanted to mention about this series.
Yeah, I could probably sit here and talk for a long time more, but unfortunately the bulk of the series itself is just like so much and it's so great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would like to add in just a little honorable mention. After the Nixonverse, there was a like 5 to 7 video short series, mini-series if you will, about the Trinity Desk project, which was extremely good. The idea being that the idea present at the very least in like the very first one about the Trinity Desk is that there's a way to make objects invisible. I think it's the first one is the Trinity Desk. There's a way to make objects invisible, and it shows you, you know, multiple like sort of invisible things. But then like it fades in with sudden like news headlines about how multiple bodies have been found inside the invisible Trinity Desk, mostly children. And so it's like asking who is responsible, and it fades out from like a couple of faces onto this giant list of like giant picture of like a million faces that essentially sort of goes into a like what you do here, what you see here, what you read here, let it stay here, which is famously the like whole tagline or the whole like core thing that was said during the Manhattan Project. And that's when you realize that the whole thing is about Trinity, the Manhattan Project, and it's so good. I love it. It also has really good use of like discordant music. It's really good at like just replaying the same music but like slightly getting it just a little more distorted every time.
I think Mario in a Suit is responsible.
I think Mario in a Suit is responsible.
He never run out of go back in time potion. Yeah.
Yeah,
big ups.
Alex Kansas, genuinely one of my favorite creators, just kind of in general. Very good. I don't mean to deify the man himself, because I know that, like I said, Lev and Alice, I believe Alice is actually the name of the voice actress as well.
Yeah, the people who do voice like roles in the series are also very good at playing these old-timey recordings.
Yes. It's very very good. Like the team, like what you're doing. If you hear this, just know that I'm a big fan of your stuff.
Yeah, and if you want to come on here, get in touch with us at NetSurfer Pro on Facebook. And I'm saying this specifically to the people who worked on Monument Mythos and Nixonverse and similar things. This is not an open invitation. I am sorry.
Yeah.
But you can find us on Twitter at NetSurfer Pro, where we post some like teasers of upcoming episodes. There should be new ones up now for our next upcoming November episodes for Folly Month.
Yes.
The Folly of Man. You can also find us on any podcasting platform you like, Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, all of that stuff I'd never heard before even that our distributor just puts us on anyways. You can give us a like, a comment, a rating, a review. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know if there's any topics you'd want us to cover in the future or things you think we should check out. And what your favorite meme is. Let us know what your favorite meme is.
Yes. Yeah, if you've got memes that you want us to talk about, please send them to us.
Yes.
We're running dry because the internet itself is running dry.
Oh,
said,
no.
Ironically.
You can find me on Twitter at Twackaroo, TWAKAROO. I tweet out my takes, my opinions about stuff such as Sonic Frontiers. And when I go live on my stream on twitch.tv/twack, where I stream on weekdays around like 1 p.m. Central Time, I play a lot of competitive games, some single player games, some interesting games, some roguelites, a good mix. Gonna be playing a lot of TFT because the new set's gonna be coming out soon. So if you're into that, check that out. And also on my Twitter, you can find updates on other projects I do.
As for myself, you can find me on Twitter and on TikTok at Galen Wilson. That's at GALANWLS0N. I post my hot takes and sometimes videos of my cat. You can find me on YouTube at The Only Galen on YouTube. You can find me on Tumblr at Twitter, tumblr.com/Galen Wilson. Just Galen Wilson, no zero on the end. And you can find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/MachineGunVampire, where I might start streaming some fun things one of these days. Been kind of wanting to get into the streaming game a bit more.
Perhaps.
But for right now, this has been our last episode of Spooky Month.
Yep. I'm off to get me some of that great man fellas.
Anyway, I'm gonna go. Take the recording of this and walk down a ravine. Hopefully, nothing bad happens.
Good luck
we
with
don't
that.
lose this episode or anything.
Wait, watch out!
Oh no! Crash.
We may never know why this episode ended up lost in the first place.
But what we do know is this:
that it was pretty fucking weird, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's probably, you know what, top bottom 5 of mine, like top 5 of the bottom for this series.
And that's it for today. Remember that you can use the coupon code, what do we call ourselves?
We're the Mystery Boy Lost Media Company.
Use coupon code Mystery Boy Lost Media Company on your next order of ball shavers.
Coming up in our next episode, we're going to talk about real life murders for some reason.
We were recently bought out.